Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the quirky, bizarre world of Victorian science, where mental illness wasn't quite as simple as taking a nap or drinking some chamomile tea. Oh no, in the 19th century, we've got everything from lobotomies to humane treatments involving ice-cold baths and being tied to chairs for your own good. But before we dive into this, take a second to like the video and subscribe, only if you actually enjoy what I do though. Leave a comment letting me know if you're cozy enough to sleep or if this whole Victorian thing is keeping you awake. Now dim the lights, turn on a fan for that soft white noise, and get comfortable because we're about to look at some very questionable treatments that were somehow deemed science in their day. Now let's pause and think. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to be treated for mental illness in a time when they thought giving you a shock of electricity or dunking you in a freezing bath could make you better? Did you think Victorian science was on the cutting edge, or just a few steps from sending you straight to the nearest asylum? How far would you go for a little mental clarity in 1875? And if you found yourself sitting in a chair with no arms and a soft voice telling you to stay still while being mildly electrocuted, would you just go with it? Because congratulations, my friend, you've just woken up in 19th century England. The year is 1887, and you're about to get a treatment you'll never forget, hopefully. You've just walked into a Victorian laboratory, and trust me, it's not the clean, sterile environment you're imagining. It's dimly lit, cluttered with odd contraptions, and filled with the faint smell of burnt metal and mystery. This, my friend, is where the real work is done. Doctors have just decided that your unfortunate condition could be treated with something called electrotherapy. What's that? Oh, just a mild shock to the brain. Don't worry, it's totally safe. Probably. You stand there, looking at the odd machine in front of you, its metal coils and wires stretching out like a twisted metal jungle, and wonder if you've somehow stepped into a steampunk horror show. The doctor, a bespectacled man in a waistcoat, gives you an encouraging nod. He reassures you that this is cutting-edge science, the future of mental health treatment. Just relax, he says, as he straps electrodes to your temples. The first jolt hits you like a lightning bolt through your skull. You don't scream, but it's a near thing. Your muscles tense involuntarily, your body jerking for a split second, and you begin to wonder if this is actually the beginning of the end for you. The doctor assures you that this is normal, that the brain just needs a little rebooting. And honestly, it's hard to argue, considering that your brain feels like it's just been plugged into an electrical socket. As the shocks keep coming, you start to get a strange sensation, more than just the jerky muscle spasms and the tingling in your mouth. It's like you're somewhere in between. Not quite fully aware of your surroundings, not fully numb either. But you are absolutely sure you didn't sign up for this level of discomfort when you walked in looking for a little treatment. You may not remember exactly how you ended up here, but you do remember the ad you read in the local newspaper, electrotherapy, the modern cure for all ills, mental and physical. Well, if by cure they mean you'll feel like a human battery for an hour, then they're right. The doctor, of course, is blissfully unconcerned with your growing unease. He is, after all, part of a rapidly growing movement of physicians who are convinced that applying electrical currents to the brain is the key to curing everything from depression to hysteria. And let's be honest, how could a treatment so advanced fail? After all, it's science. The fact that you're not screaming in agony is seen as progress, The fact that you're even still conscious is proof that this is a breakthrough, probably. You wish you could say that this was an isolated experiment, but no. Electrotherapy was all the rage in the Victorian era. It was the Aya treatment of the time. It was modern, it was clean, efficient, and of course, it had the backing of a medical establishment that was all too eager to show off how progressive it was. They didn't have time for your concerns about how safe the procedure was. You think about the future. Will electrotherapy still be a thing in 50 years? Will people laugh at it like we laugh at leeches and bloodletting? Or will future generations look back and think, hey, that electroshock therapy thing, it totally worked. As the jolts continue, you start to feel a sense of something. Could it be relief? Or is it just that your entire nervous system has been so overloaded that it no longer knows how to react? Maybe that's the answer the doctor's been searching for, the complete shutdown of the nervous system. You begin to wonder if that might be the real cure for mental illness. After all, what could be more effective than zapping the mind into oblivion? Just when you think it's all over, the doctor gives you one last jolt. It's the most intense one yet, and for a moment, you feel like you might actually become the electricity. Maybe that's the cure. Just become one with the current. Let it flow through you until you forget everything. At least then, you wouldn't have to deal with the crushing weight of Victorian expectations, societal pressures, or the knowledge that you've just signed up to be shocked into sanity. You can almost feel the madness slipping away. Maybe that's the point. Lose yourself so completely in the shock that nothing else can hurt you anymore. But as the procedure finally ends, the doctor gives you a gentle pat on the shoulder. You did very well, he says, as if you've just undergone a mild inconvenience rather than an ordeal that could easily be classified as torture. You're let out of the chair, your legs unsteady, and the world seems strangely distant, like you're watching it from behind a fogged-up window. Was it worth it? You're not sure. But hey, at least you've got a story to tell, even if you'll never quite remember all the details. And just as you're about to leave, the doctor's voice calls after you. Remember, if it didn't work this time, we can always try again next week. And for a moment you think, is that the Victorian equivalent of, don't call us, we'll call you? Either way, you're pretty sure you'd prefer the whole thing to be a terrible nightmare, if only you could remember it clearly enough. They're about to strap you into a chair, no arms, no legroom, just you, a wide-eyed Victorian doctor, and a set of metal pads that they're going to place on your temples. It's all for your own good, they promise. They start the machine, and suddenly, your body jerks as electricity courses through you. It's not comfortable, but hey, at least it's considered scientifically sound, by Victorian standards, of course. The doctor watches with the same enthusiasm you might expect from someone presenting you with a freshly baked loaf of bread, except this loaf might have a side of brain damage. You can hear the hum of the machine intensifying as they adjust the dial. How high is too high? Well, they're about to find out, aren't they? As the electrical current surges, your muscles lock up, your teeth clench, and you feel every nerve in your body scramble for survival. You can't help but wonder, how was this ever considered therapeutic? It's like a modern-day electric chair, but instead of going for the big finale, they're just giving you a little appetizer to the shock treatment. Your vision goes blurry, and for a moment, you swear your hair stands on end. If your body wasn't restrained, you'd probably be convulsing on the floor like a fish that jumped out of the tank. The doctor, however, is calm and collected, seemingly unbothered by the sight of your literal shock and awe. After all, he's seen this before, and in his mind, it's all perfectly safe. It's science. Trust the process. With each jolt, you feel yourself slip farther from reality, as though you're being pulled into a dream or a nightmare. The doctor keeps repeating soothing words, but they're lost on you. All you can think is, did I just sign up for this? You try to squint, but it's hard to focus when your mind is spinning faster than a Victorian penny farthing bicycle. Your thoughts are like sparks jumping between synapses, none of them making sense, just shocking you in all the wrong ways. And yet, the doctor insists this is the future of mental health treatment. Sure, it's extreme, but when you think about it, isn't everything extreme when you're trying to cure a mental illness in the 1800s? We're talking about a time when leeches were considered a viable cure, and lobotomies were just around the corner. A few more pulses, and your body feels like a live wire. Your hands can't grip the sides of the chair anymore. You wonder briefly if this is what it feels like to be possessed by electricity. Then it hits you. What if this doesn't work? What if I end up worse than I started? But just as quickly, the machine begins to slow, and you're left in the eerie silence that follows a storm. The doctor doesn't wait for you to recover fully before smiling and nodding approvingly, as though you've just been through a spa day instead of an assault on your nervous system. You've done wonderfully, he says, as if you haven't just been turned into a human electrical socket. You try to nod, but you're still somewhere between alive and shock-induced coma. You're helped out of the chair, your legs wobbly as you stand, as though you've just climbed out of a deep well and haven't quite found solid ground yet. There's a strange, metallic taste in your mouth, no doubt the remnants of whatever you've just been subjected to. But hey, at least it's working, right? Well, at least that's what they'll tell you. You're escorted to a small, quiet room to rest and recover, and for a moment, you wonder if the brainwaves you've just experienced are any better than what you were dealing with before. But before you can fully contemplate the future of your sanity, the doctor bursts in, telling you the session has been a success. He makes a note in his ledger, mumbling about how many sessions it might take to fix you, perhaps more. This is, after all, Victorian science, where everything is a work in progress. The only problem? It's your brain, and progress feels a lot more like regression. Afterward, as you slowly regain some semblance of coherence, you begin to doubt the legitimacy of what just happened. Maybe this is the beginning of your cure, or maybe, just maybe, it's the start of something far worse. Is it really worth enduring these shocks, each more intense than the last, just to get through another day in the world of Victorian science? And the best part? You still don't know exactly what they're trying to cure. Was it the depression, anxiety, or just the fact that your doctor might have too many buttons on his fancy machine and too little understanding of how much electricity the human body can take? The funny thing is, you're not entirely sure if it's the shock or the idea of being shocked that really disturbs you. You feel a strange connection to all those poor souls who've sat in that chair before you, hoping that this time it'll make everything better. You can't help but wonder, what if it works? But then again, you have no real way of knowing. Just like Victorian science itself, this is all a gamble. They don't have all the answers yet, but they're certainly eager to find them, whether you like it or not. And as you step out into the Victorian air, feeling lightheaded and confused, you can't help but think, maybe next time I'll just stick with a nice cup of tea instead. You wish you could say that this was an isolated experiment, but no. Electrotherapy was all the rage in the Victorian era. It was the treatment of the time. It was modern, it was clean, efficient, and of course, it had the backing of a medical establishment that was all too eager to show off how progressive it was. They didn't have time for your concerns about how safe the procedure was. You think about the future. Will electrotherapy still be a thing in 50 years? Will people laugh at it like we laugh at leeches and bloodletting? Or will future generations look back and think, hey, that electroshock therapy thing, it totally worked? As the jolts continue, you start to feel a sense of something. Could it be relief? Or is it just that your entire nervous system has been so overloaded that it no longer knows how to react? Maybe that's the answer the doctor's been searching for, the complete shutdown of the nervous system. You begin to wonder if that might be the real cure for mental illness. After all, what could be more effective than zapping the mind into oblivion? Just when you think it's all over, the doctor gives you one last jolt. It's the most intense one yet, and for a moment, you feel like you might actually become the electricity. Maybe that's the cure. Just become one with the current. Let it flow through you until you forget everything. At least then, you wouldn't have to deal with the crushing weight of Victorian expectations, societal pressures, or the knowledge that you've just signed up to be shocked into sanity. You can almost feel the madness slipping away. Maybe that's the point. Lose yourself so completely in the shock that nothing else can hurt you anymore. But as the procedure finally ends, the doctor gives you a gentle pat on the shoulder. You did very well, he says, as if you've just undergone a mild inconvenience, rather than an ordeal that could easily be classified as torture. You're let out of the chair, your legs unsteady, and the world seems strangely distant, like you're watching it from behind a fogged-up window. Was it worth it? You're not sure, but hey, at least you've got a story to tell, even if you'll never quite remember all the details. And just as you're about to leave, the doctor's voice calls after you. Remember, if it didn't work this time, we can always try again next week. And for a moment, you think, is that the Victorian equivalent of, don't call us, we'll call you? Either way, you're pretty sure you'd prefer the whole thing to be a terrible nightmare. If only you could remember it clearly enough. Now, let's talk about the cold water cure, which is exactly what it sounds like. They're going to dunk you in icy water to shock your system into a better state of mind. It's like swimming in a lake during a snowstorm, only less relaxing and far more terrifying. The cold is supposed to wake you up, but in reality, you're just trying not to pass out from the shock to your body. And if you're wondering how this is supposed to be helpful for your unfortunate condition, don't worry. The Victorian doctors have the answer. It's science. You're not just going to survive this experience. You're going to thrive, eventually, maybe. You're led into a small, chilly room, the air so cold it bites at your skin. The doctor stands there, smiling like a madman, as he instructs the nurse to prepare the cold plunge. They tell you that the shock of cold water will send a surge through your body, clearing your mind and refreshing your spirit. If you've ever been splashed with icy water after falling into a snowbank, you have an inkling of what's about to happen. Except now, it's not an accident. It's intentional. They want you to feel it. They want you to feel the full brunt of a human ice cube tray. Your mind races. What if it works? What if this really does make me feel better? But that's not really what you're worried about, is it? No, it's the question of survival. You glance nervously at the tub, which looks like it's been filled with enough ice to freeze over a small village. The water is glistening in the dim light, and for a moment, you consider making a run for it. You think about the safety of a warm fire, a cup of tea, or even your own bed, anything but the freezing water that's about to swallow you whole. But no, you've come this far. You'll get in. The doctor encourages you, assures you that it's not so bad. It's a quick shock to the system, a quick plunge. You won't even remember it. So you step closer, toes curling at the edge of the ice-cold water. Just breathe, the nurse says with a smile that's way too enthusiastic for the situation. She's already wetting the cloth, preparing to submerge you in the icy depths. You take a deep breath. Here we go. The moment your body hits the water, it feels like the life is being sucked out of you. The cold hits like 1,000 sharp needles, piercing your skin and sending waves of panic through your chest. You gasp, your body seizing up, but you're told to relax. Relax? Your heart is racing, your lungs are fighting for air, and your brain is short-circuiting from the shock. This isn't relaxing. This is a fight for survival. You try to stay still. You try to remember why you're doing this. Mental clarity, the doctor said. Restoration of mind and body, he promised. But all you can focus on is the frigid water slicing through your bones, each second longer than the last. It's not unlike a nightmare, but instead of waking up in relief, you're stuck in the nightmare. No escape, no way out but to endure. The nurse tells you to keep your head above water, but you can't focus on her words. The ice-cold water seeps into every crevice, every pore. It's like being dunked into the very core of the earth. It's not just physical colds. It's a deep, chilling sense of existential freeze. The world feels distant, like you're floating in space, trying to stay grounded while gravity fights you every second. Your thoughts scatter, your body trembles uncontrollably, and the only thing you're certain of is that you're never, ever going near a cold bath again. But this is a cure. This is a treatment. You remind yourself that you're supposed to feel better after this. You hold on to that belief, clinging to it like the life raft that it isn't. You're trying to hold it together, but the cold is pushing you to the edge. How could they possibly think that a dunk in ice water is good for anyone, let alone someone suffering from mental anguish? Your body shivers and shakes uncontrollably, and for a moment, it feels like the cold might swallow you whole. Finally, the nurse pulls you out. You gasp for breath, shivering violently as your body slowly begins to warm. The icy grip on your body loosens, and you're helped to a small cot to dry off. See? The nurse smiles, wiping your face with a warm cloth. You look better already. You try to nod, but your teeth are chattering too hard to make the movement look convincing. Sure, maybe your skin's a little pinker, maybe you're awake, but at what cost? As you lie there, wrapped in a blanket, you start to wonder, was it worth it? The ice-cold shock, the numbing pain, the sense of utter helplessness? And when you finally recover, the world seems just as unclear as before, albeit with a few more layers of discomfort. Maybe the cold bath didn't cure your mind. Maybe it just froze it for a moment. You sit up, blinking at the doctor as he makes more notes in your chart. He says you'll need several more sessions to see lasting results. You try to smile, but all you can think is, next time, I'm asking for a cup of tea and a blanket. You'd take those over another icy plunge any day. Have you ever wondered what the brain actually looks like? Well, Victorian doctors were about to find out in the most invasive way possible. Lobotomies were the treatment of choice for unmanageable patients, and it involved taking a sharp instrument and physically altering the brain to calm the patient down. Trust me, you'll feel the effects immediately, or maybe not, depending on how much of your brain they've decided to remove. Don't worry though, they promise it's all for your own good. What could possibly go wrong when someone's poking around inside your skull with a sharp tool and no real concept of how the mind works? The procedure begins with a cheerful little discussion. The doctor, who probably hasn't slept in 72 hours, assures you that it's a quick procedure, nothing to worry about. He explains, as if it were perfectly normal, that they'll be entering through the eye socket. Yes, you heard that right, the eye socket. You're not getting a gentle skull incision? No. They've decided that accessing your brain through your eyes is the most efficient route. It's almost as if Victorian doctors saw human anatomy as a loose suggestion, and the eye was just an unexpected shortcut. As they prepare, you try to distract yourself by thinking of something, anything else. The smell of antiseptic in the room is almost overwhelming, but it does nothing to ease your nerves. It smells like a hospital, or what you imagine a place meant to cure might smell like. In reality, it's the faintest scent of danger, of uncharted territory, of a doctor who's about to open you up like a doll in need of repairs. The doctor, eager to begin, dons his gloves, which may or may not have been sterilized, but who's counting? And before you can protest, a sharp tool is placed against your eye. You feel the coldness of the metal before the pressure begins, followed by the sickening crack as they gently move through the eye socket. If you were in the mood to scream, this would be your moment, but the doctor reassures you that everything will be fine. This is just how the procedure works. You can almost hear the words echoing in your head. This is just how the procedure works. Sure, Doc, sure. With one quick motion, they've made their entrance. You feel pressure, a slight tug, and then nothing. At first, there's a strange, almost numbing sensation as they begin to work their way through the delicate tissue of your brain. You wonder if this is what it feels like to have your soul altered, as the doctor moves with precision and practiced nonchalance. The idea of cutting away the madness now seems less like a metaphor and more like the actual objective. The notion that your brain could be altered this easily, no anesthesia, no warning, is both horrifying and oddly fascinating. Time becomes irrelevant as the doctor works. You can't tell if it's been 5 minutes or 5 hours. The reality of the situation hits you with the force of a runaway carriage. This is it. They're just hacking at your brain. As they move the tool around, you try to convince yourself that you're fine, that this is a treatment, not some horrific violation. The buzzing in your ears grows louder, but the cold, clinical silence of the room persists. The assistant next to the doctor is busy scribbling notes, whether they're about your vitals or how much of your sanity they've just stolen. You're not sure. The doctor continues, pushing and pulling, making small adjustments, as if he's arranging the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle that were never meant to fit. The precision is astounding. The mental faculties that once defined you are now being tuned by this Victorian madman who believes that the best way to treat a person's problems is by literally chopping out a piece of their personality. How delightful. And just when you think you're about to black out, the doctor pulls back, satisfied. There we go, he says, as though he's just completed a task as simple as cleaning his glasses. Your brain, now altered, and perhaps a little less yourself, is left to recover. You're patched up, of course. Your eye is bandaged and your head is a little heavier than you remember. You try to speak, but your thoughts feel like they're struggling to catch up to your mouth. What happened? What did they take from you? You don't know yet, but you feel the weight of it in the pit of your stomach. The doctor leaves the room, and you're left alone to contemplate the strange, surreal experience. You're not sure if you feel different yet, but something inside you is definitely gone. Maybe it's the anger you used to carry with you, or the sharp edge of your creativity that once sparked every conversation. Or maybe it's just your will to ever trust a doctor again. In the days following the procedure, you'll begin to notice subtle changes. You'll feel different, distant, perhaps even numb. Friends and family will visit, their faces filled with pity, and they'll ask you how you're doing. But you'll only be able to offer them a half-hearted response, because in truth, you're not sure. The person who sat in that chair isn't the same one standing now. The lobotomy, a supposed cure, has left its mark. In a way, the madness isn't what's been removed. It's the you that you once were. Lobotomies were once hailed as the future of mental health, but like many of the Victorian treatments, they've been left in the past. What we've learned since then is that no one should have the right to carve away your very essence in the name of healing. Yet for a brief moment in history, a simple cut was seen as the cure for everything from schizophrenia to depression. In the end, however, what was really cut away was not just madness, but humanity itself. Before we had things like actual medicine, people thought bloodletting could cure all kinds of things. Let's drain a little blood from you, and that should fix your mood, was the logic. So here you are, sitting calmly while a doctor prepares to take a little extra from you. Don't worry though, this was the scientific method in action, or maybe just medieval trial and error. Either way, you're about to experience a treatment so rudimentary, so utterly nonsensical by modern standards, that you might start wondering if your doctor has taken one too many blows to the head with a mallet. You watch as the doctor, who looks like he just stepped out of a grim fairy tale, assembles his equipment. There's a bowl, a large, somewhat intimidating one, and some sharp-looking tools that might have just been taken from a medieval kitchen rather than a medical office. This isn't a sterile environment. You're not lying on a comfy bed with a faint whiff of lavender. No. You're sitting on a creaky wooden chair, probably the same one your great-great-grandfather sat on during his own remedy sessions. As the doctor grins at you, the smile is almost too wide, too eager, like he's about to perform a magic trick. Only, this isn't a trick. It's real, and you're the volunteer. Now, you've heard of bloodletting, of course. You've seen it in old paintings, read about it in history books, and maybe you've even heard your grandparents muttering about it after a few too many glasses of wine. But now, it's your turn. Your doctor explains that it's all for the greater good, that releasing excess blood will restore your balance and help you feel better. You're not exactly sure what balance means in this context, but you're about to find out. With a theatrical flourish, the doctor ties a cloth around your upper arm to make the veins more prominent. Classic, I'm about to make this very official move. He's trying to make you feel like this is a normal procedure, a routine medical intervention. Just relax, he says, as if bloodletting is as casual as a dentist cleaning your teeth. But you're starting to feel less like a patient and more like a farm animal being prepped for slaughter. And you're really hoping you're not about to faint. Then comes the incision. A quick flick of the doctor's wrist, and you feel a sharp sting. For a moment, you feel nothing. Then the blood begins to flow. It's warm, it's sticky, and the sight of it draining from your body feels deeply unnatural, like you're watching someone siphon off your soul. You're not supposed to watch, of course, but you can't help it. Your blood is spilling out, and you're sitting there calm, almost mesmerized by the whole ordeal. You can hear the doctor muttering to himself about the balance of your humors. Apparently you have too much black bile, or phlegm, or whatever else they decided to blame for all human ailments back then. It's almost funny how unfunny the whole thing is. You try to distract yourself by thinking about the latest scandal in town, or the fact that you have no idea how much blood is being removed, but it's hard to focus on anything other than the sensation of your life slowly being drained away. And then there's the pain. It's not unbearable, but it's not pleasant either. You feel lightheaded as the blood continues to flow into the bowl. The doctor seems pleased with the progress, and you wonder, not for the first time, whether this treatment is really working or if it's just medieval wishful thinking. Is there some mystical process happening in your body right now? Some ancient cure for mental or physical ills? Or is this just a wildly misguided, possibly dangerous ritual designed to make you feel better by making you literally weaker? Finally, the doctor stops. You've lost a little blood, but hey, you're still conscious, which is a good sign, right? The bandage goes on, and they tell you to rest. But you can't help but wonder if the cure was worse than the illness. You feel dizzy, lightheaded, and slightly more irritable than before. Is this what it means to be restored? You're not sure, but at least they seem confident that you're now a better, healthier version of yourself. The real kicker is that bloodletting didn't just end with a few poor souls like you. Oh no, this treatment was considered cutting edge for centuries. Thousands of patients were subjected to the same ritual, all because someone, somewhere, decided that draining blood was the answer to mental health problems, fevers, or even the occasional bout of melancholia. Imagine the real shock when doctors finally realized that maybe, just maybe, draining people's blood wasn't actually doing them any favors. But by then, centuries had passed, and the damage was done. So what have we learned? Bloodletting was, at best, a misguided attempt to cure people by depleting their very life force. At worst, it was a dangerous and unscientific practice that left many people weaker, sicker, and on occasion dead. You're probably feeling a little better now, right? Maybe not physically, but you've certainly gained a new appreciation for modern medicine and a renewed respect for your veins. Next time you're feeling under the weather, just remember, at least no one's going to try and drain your blood to cure you. And if they do, maybe just tell them you're perfectly fine. The Victorian asylum, where the line between healing and horror is thinner than the doctor's patience. It's here that you'll be confined to a room that looks less like a sanctuary and more like a forgotten dungeon. There's no escape, and don't even think about asking for a little privacy. But hey, at least you're surrounded by like-minded individuals, because nothing says mental health treatment like a room full of the mentally unstable. You're escorted through the creaky, dimly lit hallways, the walls adorned with peeling wallpaper that's seen better days, probably several decades ago. The scent of must and stale air fills your nostrils, and you can't help but feel a chill run down your spine. The faint clattering of chains and the occasional distant scream remind you that this is no ordinary place of healing. This is the Victorian asylum, where the treatment of mental illness is as much about containment as it is about care, or rather, the lack thereof. You're shown to your room, which is unfortunately less of a room and more of a cell. The bed is nothing more than a rough-hewn slab of wood with a thin, tattered blanket. The walls are bare, and the only window in the room is so high up that you can barely see the sky, probably for your own goods. You're not here to see the world outside, you're here to be cured, which in the Victorian era could mean anything from gentle therapy to having your dignity stripped away piece by piece. Your fellow inmates, or patients, are the unfortunate souls who, like you, have been deemed mentally unfit by the standards of the time. You'll hear their murmurs through the thin walls, some talking to themselves, others crying out in desperation, and a few who just stare vacantly at nothing, their minds as lost as the building itself. The nurse who shows you to your cell offers a cheerful smile, but it's one of those smiles that doesn't quite reach her eyes. She leaves you alone, locking the door behind her with a cold, metallic click that echoes louder than it should. At first, you try to make sense of it all. What did I do wrong? Surely this can't be the answer to your condition. But no one answers. No one is interested in offering anything that resembles comfort. The doctors are too busy with their own experiments, their own ideas of what constitutes a cure. And the truth is, they're not really here to help you. They're here to keep you quiet, to keep you under control. Healing isn't about you getting better. It's about you being manageable, about you no longer being a problem. The whole idea of mental health treatment has less to do with compassion and more with how neatly you can fit into society's ideals of normalcy. The most troubling part? The lack of understanding about mental illness. The term insanity was used freely, and the ways in which people were treated ranged from absurdly harsh to bizarrely ineffective. Some patients were subjected to physical restraint, locked in straitjackets for hours on end, while others were simply left to wander the halls aimlessly, as if giving them a place to roam would somehow heal them. And you? You might be lucky enough to be placed in one of the quieter rooms, where they'll gently suggest that you meditate or stare at the wall in complete silence for hours. Or, if you're unlucky, you'll be one of the special cases who require more drastic methods like isolation, starvation, or being tied down while doctors administer treatments that can only be described as cruel and unusual. You pass the time in a daze, wondering how long it will take for someone to realize you're more than just a broken mind, that you might actually be capable of recovery, if only someone cared enough to treat you like a human being. The few conversations you overhear in the corridors are laced with desperation. The patients, for the most part, are resigned to their fate, having long lost the hope that someone will come for them. But not everyone gives up. You catch fleeting glances of people who are still fighting, still trying to maintain some semblance of their former selves. You wonder, will I be one of them? Or will I fade away, like so many others in this place? The treatments, if you can call them that, are a farce. Sometimes the doctors prescribe talk therapy, which in the context of the asylum means you'll sit across from a doctor who writes in a notebook while you try to make sense of your own disjointed thoughts. Other times, you'll be given a concoction of herbal remedies that barely seem like they could cure a common cold, let alone something as complex as the human mind. There's no real diagnosis, there's no real cure. There's only the hope that over time, your mind will conform to their idea of what's normal. Some nights, you'll hear the sound of a bell ringing in the distance, a signal for the evening's rounds. The staff walks through the halls, checking each patient's cell to ensure they're still in place, still under control. You wonder how much longer this will go on, if there's ever going to be an end to it all. You look around at the other patients, and for the first time, you wonder if you'll ever get out. Will you leave this place as a whole person, or will you leave a shell of who you used to be? But even in the bleakness of the Victorian asylum, there is one undeniable truth. You're not alone. As bad as it is, there are others here who understand what it's like to be trapped in your own mind, to be imprisoned by the expectations of a world that doesn't understand you. In that shared suffering, there's a faint glimmer of connection. You might not be free, but at least you're not the only one. In the end, the Victorian asylum wasn't a place for healing. It was a place for containment. For too many, it was a place of hopelessness. And as you lie there in the dim light, wondering if anyone will ever truly understand what you've gone through, you realize that the only thing worse than being in the asylum is the thought of being forgotten once you leave. Because the worst kind of prison is the one you can't escape. Not physically, but mentally. In Victorian times, doctors believed that treating mental illness with kindness and compassion could cure most patients. But don't get too comfortable. The kindness wasn't always evident. Sometimes it came with a side of forced labor, long hours in uncomfortable conditions, and the occasional philosophical lecture from your doctor about the importance of good mental health, which, of course, you're not entirely convinced he's qualified to give. At first, the concept of moral treatment sounds almost idyllic. After all, what could be better than compassion, understanding, and respect? You're here because the doctor believes that your mind needs some care and attention, not just physical restraint or cold water dunkings. So you're led to a room that smells faintly of lavender and old books, and the doctor, with a smile that is almost too bright for comfort, explains that the goal is simple: to treat you as a person, to make you feel understood, to help you get back to your best self. If you didn't know any better, you might almost believe him. But here's the catch: this treatment doesn't come for free. The first part of your moral treatment is ironically a bit of hard labor. In this model of mental health care, you're expected to work through your issues by keeping yourself busy with physical tasks. And these aren't just any tasks. No, these are the jobs that require long hours, grueling repetition, and a certain amount of humility. You might be asked to help with cleaning the hallways, tending to the gardens, or doing laundry for the other patients. It's not as relaxing as it sounds. The floors are always a little too slippery, the windowsills coated with dust, and the weather in the garden never quite comfortable enough to be enjoyable. You spend your days bending over back-breaking work, scrubbing floors and lugging buckets of water. The air is thick with the sounds of other patients muttering to themselves or occasionally humming odd little tunes. In between your chores, you're given lectures on how to think positively. The doctor will pop by occasionally to offer wisdom, his face glowing with the pride of a man who's just figured out the secret to life. A healthy mind requires a healthy body, he tells you, as you awkwardly bend to mop the same patch of floor for the 6th time that hour. He's got a whole catalog of suggestions on how you can feel better. Eat well, he says, while the food you're served looks suspiciously like it could have been scraped off the floor. Get fresh air, he advises, while keeping you locked inside a cramped room for most of the day. And of course, think happy thoughts, which at this point feels about as practical as telling someone to fly just by believing in themselves. It doesn't take long for you to realize that this moral treatment isn't nearly as kind as it's advertised to be. Sure, they're not strapping you into a chair or dunking you in cold water, but the treatment comes with its own set of tortures: physical exhaustion, mental fatigue, and an overwhelming sense of isolation. The doctors, while perhaps well-meaning, are also severely underqualified to help you. They're not providing therapy in any meaningful way. They're simply trying to keep you busy enough that you stop questioning the world around you. And frankly, it's working. You don't have time to wonder why you're being treated like this when your body is constantly in motion from one chore to the next. The worst part is the unrelenting optimism they push at you. The doctor insists that this labor will rebuild you, but you can't help but feel like you're just becoming more and more of a cog in a well-oiled machine, an involuntary part of the system. They talk about your mental well-being while giving you tasks that are monotonous and exhausting, never allowing for rest or introspection. You begin to wonder if real recovery ever crossed their minds, or if it was all just about keeping you occupied, keeping you from questioning your circumstances, keeping you from thinking too much about why you're here in the first place. And then, when you're finally too exhausted to keep up with the work or the lectures, the doctor might even add a little guilt to the mix. "You're getting better," he says, eyes twinkling like he's discovered the secret to the universe, "but you're not sure you feel any better. You're tired, worn out, and your mind feels no clearer than when you arrived. What was meant to be a kind and compassionate treatment program feels more like a well-meaning prison sentence, and the kindness it promised seems more like a facade." At the end of the day, when you're finally allowed to rest, you wonder if this is really helping at all. You're physically drained, your spirit a little more broken than when you first arrived. The doctor's smiling face lingers in your thoughts, and you start to question whether this moral treatment is truly the answer to your suffering, or just another way to make you believe that being exhausted and mentally drained is the road to recovery. In the end, the truth becomes painfully clear. Kindness and compassion aren't just about giving someone tasks to do to keep them busy. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do is to truly listen to someone's needs, to offer real care, and to acknowledge that recovery isn't just about physical work or optimistic speeches. It's about understanding the person as a whole. But in Victorian times, that was a lesson most doctors still had yet to learn. Ever heard of the quieting chair? No? Well, let me introduce you to the device that made Victorian mental health care so delightfully absurd. It's a wooden chair designed to restrict your movements tightly and keep you perfectly still. Apparently, it was believed that keeping patients from moving would calm them. You'll feel like a marionette puppet in this one. The question is, will the chair hold you together, or will you finally snap? You're sitting there now, looking at it with a mixture of dread and curiosity. The chair isn't what you'd call comfortable. In fact, it's downright sinister looking. Its high wooden back and wide, uncomfortable seat seem more suited for medieval torture than therapy. But hey, it's Victorian science at work, right? And if the doctor assures you that it will help calm your unruly behavior, then surely it's worth a try. The restraints are the real kicker: thick leather straps that will be wrapped tightly around your arms, legs, and even your chest. It's like they're preparing you for a medieval performance rather than a treatment. The straps don't just keep you still. They make sure that you'll feel every inch of discomfort, every second of restraint. You sit in the chair trying to shift your position even slightly, but it's impossible. The straps tighten around your body like a vice. You're locked in place, unable to move, and you're told that this will help clear your mind. Clear your mind? More like shut it down. The logic, of course, is that if you can't move, you can't act out, and you can't hurt yourself or others. But what about your mind? What happens when you're forced to sit there in complete stillness, your body locked away like a prisoner of war? What happens to your thoughts when all you can do is sit in a wooden chair and stare at the walls, trying not to panic? The doctor tells you to relax, but how do you relax when you're tied to a chair like a human statue? You try to calm your breathing, but every inhale feels constricted by the leather straps cutting into your skin. Your muscles ache from being forced to stay in one position for too long. It's not just physical pain, there's a mental strain too. The longer you sit there, the more your thoughts begin to turn on themselves. You can't move, can't fidget, can't adjust. Your body is telling you to move, to break free, but you're not allowed to. All you can do is sit and think about how much you'd like to leave this chair. As you sit there, staring at the walls, you can't help but wonder, was this really considered treatment? In a time when the mind was seen as a mysterious and unruly thing, the quieting chair was the Victorian answer to mental illness, control through physical restraint. Of course, they didn't know what we know now. Back then, the brain wasn't understood. Emotional and psychological problems were often seen as a failure of willpower or a moral weakness rather than complex conditions that required thoughtful care. So why not restrain the body and hope the mind follows? But the more you sit there, the more you realize that it's not your mind that's the problem. It's the idea that this treatment, this rigid, painful restraint, could possibly work. You can't think, can't move, and what's worse, you can't escape the feeling that the quieting chair isn't about healing, it's about domination. They may think they're helping you by keeping you still, but all it does is build a quiet, simmering frustration. You begin to feel trapped, not only by the chair, but by the idea that you must submit to this form of treatment. The doctor checks on you periodically, nodding approvingly when you're still, as if you're some sort of well-behaved animal. His approval feels hollow, like you've been turned into a test subject rather than a patient. The chair isn't a tool for healing, it's a tool for control. It's as if they believe that by forcing you into stillness, they can fix whatever mental problem they've decided you have. The idea that movement, expression, and freedom could be part of the cure seems to be entirely lost on them. As the hours drag on, you start to feel yourself becoming numb, not just from the physical discomfort, but from the emotional weight of being so controlled. You're no longer sure if you've been calmed by the stillness or if you've simply become resigned to your fate. The world outside the chair feels distant, as though it belongs to someone else. The doctor comes by again, offering kind words that ring hollow in your ears. You're beginning to question whether your mind will ever feel right again, whether this treatment is truly the key to healing, or if it's just another Victorian experiment in futility. Eventually, the restraints are removed, and you're helped out of the chair. But something's changed. You feel disconnected, as though the chair has taken something from you. Your patience, your will, your ability to move freely in the world. The quieting chair may have quieted your body, but it's done nothing to quiet your mind. It's left you with more questions than answers, and the unsettling feeling that you've been manipulated rather than helped. As you walk away from the chair, you can't help but think, what if the true healing is in movement, in freedom, in letting your mind and body express themselves freely? Maybe, just maybe, the answer isn't in a wooden chair that restricts your every movement, but in the freedom to move, to speak, and to heal on your own terms. But for now, you'll leave the quieting chair behind, a relic of a time when the pursuit of mental health was as misguided as the chair itself. Forget relaxing in a warm bath. In Victorian times, the bath was powered by electricity. Yes, you read that correctly. Electricity in water. It was supposed to cleanse your mind, body, and spirit. But let's be real, you'd probably just end up shocked, wet, and confused. Who needs relaxation when you can feel the unmistakable zing of electricity? You've probably imagined a nice, soothing soak in a tub to wash away your worries, a quiet moment of warmth and calm. But no, not in the Victorian era. Here, the notion of relaxation is about to be redefined. Your bath, instead of gently soothing your muscles, is now powered by electric currents that make you feel like a human light bulb. It sounds like something out of a bad science fiction novel, but in the world of Victorian medicine, this was the future. You're ushered into a small, dimly lit room. There's a tub, yes, but it doesn't look anything like the comfy, inviting ones you've seen in modern spas. This one looks like it could double as a bathtub and a shock therapy device in one. As you step closer, you notice metal coils attached to the sides, the kind you've seen used for electrical equipment, not for any sort of calming ritual. A technician, dressed in what seems like an unnecessarily bulky uniform, hands you a strange set of instructions. One of the first things you notice is that you're not supposed to move once you're in the water. Apparently, the therapeutic benefits come from the fact that your body will act as a conductor for the electricity. The idea is to let the current pass through you, helping to rejuvenate your system. Of course, you're trying to remember if there's any modern advice about not electrocuting yourself in water. Your anxiety begins to spike as the technician sets up the controls. You're told the water will be charged with just the right amount of electricity, enough to stimulate the body's circulation, but not enough to cause any harm. Sure. You take a deep breath and step into the tub, trying to pretend that this doesn't feel like the worst possible idea. The moment your body makes contact with the water, the current hums to life, and a strange buzzing sensation shoots through your skin. It's not quite painful, but it's certainly not pleasant. You feel the current traveling through you, each muscle tightening, your nerves alerting you to the fact that this isn't a relaxing bath at all. It's an interrogation by water and electricity. The worst part? You can't move. The instructions were very clear on that. No moving. So you sit, stiff as a board, as the current pulsates through your limbs, and you're left trying to focus on anything else. The sound of your breathing, the faint smell of soap in the air, the fact that you can't feel your toes anymore. The technician watches you closely, keeping track of the time, as if this is just a regular part of the therapeutic process. But in your head, you're spiraling. Is this how the Victorians cured people? With electricity coursing through their bodies in an attempt to heal their minds? All you can think about is whether this treatment is helping or if it's just another way to make you feel completely out of control. Minutes stretch into what feels like hours. The water around you feels less like a soothing soak and more like an electric trap, holding you hostage while it zaps away your dignity and sanity. The sensation, is hard to describe. It's like someone is flicking a switch inside your body, lighting up your muscles in ways they've never been lit before. It's not a jolt, not an immediate zap of pain, but more like a constant gnawing hum that you can't escape. It's as though your whole body is slowly being electrified, with no way to stop it. The worst part, it's supposed to help. The theory behind electric baths was that they could cure everything from mental health issues to skin ailments to poor circulation. The electricity was believed to stimulate the nervous system, revitalize the body, and even cleanse the spirit. It was supposed to be like a bath for your soul, a way to purify yourself from the inside out. But as you sit there, immobilized, with the tingling sensation slowly driving you to the edge of your patience, you start to wonder if it's worth it. What if this isn't healing? What if this is just another form of medieval torture, dressed up as science? You can't move, you can't escape. All you can do is wait for the current to stop. Eventually, the technician announces that the session is over, and you're left to slowly lift yourself out of the tub, feeling as though you've just been through a bizarre electrical gauntlet. Your body tingles from head to toe, and you're not sure if it's from the bath or the sheer mental exhaustion of sitting there while being electrocuted. The technician congratulates you for enduring the treatment and tells you that you should feel better now. You're skeptical, to say the least. You feel different, sure, but not in the way that feels rejuvenating. You feel like you've just survived an ordeal, one that you're not sure was even necessary. As you leave the room, you can't help but wonder, was this the future of healing in the Victorian world? A few electrical shocks in a tub, and poof, your mind and body are cured? It's a strange thought. Sure, modern medicine has come a long way since then, but you can't help but think that at the very least, the Victorians were right about one thing. It's certainly shocking. Hydrotherapy, aka submerging your body into pools of water that were probably less hygienic than you'd prefer. You'd think this would be a calming, spa-like experience, but instead, you're sitting in a freezing, murky pool while doctors tell you to relax. Spoiler, you won't. You'll spend most of the time thinking, shouldn't I be drying off? The room smells faintly of damp wood and something that might be mildew, and you're led to a pool that looks like it was last cleaned. Well, never. There's no gentle breeze, no soft towels waiting for you afterward, just the ominous gurgling of the water, and a doctor with a cheery demeanor who insists that this is the future of wellness. Just relax, he says, like that's all it takes to magically transform a freezing cold, grimy pool into a therapeutic oasis. You're already shivering just looking at it, but apparently this is good for you. It's supposed to help, they assure you. It's a treatment designed to balance the humors, whatever that means. In practice, it feels more like being plunged into a medieval torture chamber than anything resembling healing. The water is cold, cold enough that your teeth are chattering before you even step in, but you're not allowed to hesitate. There's a nurse nearby with a stiff, overly polite smile, ushering you to enter the pool. As you dip your toes in, the shock of cold radiates through your body, and it quickly becomes clear. Relaxation is nowhere on the horizon. The water is murky, almost opaque, and you can't help but wonder how many people have bathed in this same pool before you. The idea of soaking your troubles away is quickly being replaced with the thought of, is this even sanitary? The clean part of hydrotherapy seems to have been conveniently overlooked by the Victorian medical community. Instead, you're left to wrestle with the unsettling feeling that you're now part of a long line of people who've been dunked in this very same water. You're encouraged to immerse yourself completely, so when you go, submerged to your waist, and then further until your body is entirely engulfed in the cold, unforgiving water. It's less a soothing soak and more a forced baptism of discomfort. As you sit there, shivering uncontrollably, the doctor begins explaining the virtues of this treatment. The idea is that the cold water will shock your system into health. It's meant to invigorate your body, improve circulation, and if you're lucky, clear your mind. Instead, all you can focus on is the fact that your teeth are chattering so loudly, you're convinced the entire room can hear them. You're trying not to hyperventilate, but it's hard when your body is instinctively fighting for warmth. Meanwhile, the doctor continues his lecture, cheerfully discussing the scientific principles behind the treatment. He's practically glowing with excitement, as if he's about to reveal the secret to eternal youth, while you're just trying not to think about how cold your legs have become. Is this really a therapy, you wonder? Maybe you've missed something. Maybe this is one of those you'll feel better after the shock wears off situations. You ask yourself if it's too late to just get out and run straight for a warm fire. The minutes feel like hours. The doctor's voice drones on, detailing how the water should help restore your vitality and stir the humors in your body. He even mentions some ancient theory about water's ability to realign your body's natural energies. You're not exactly sure what that means, but you're pretty sure it doesn't involve being frozen half to death in a murky pool. It's clear that you're not here for a soothing spa day. You're here for an ordeal. The more you sit, the more the cold water seems to seep into your bones, leaving you feeling tired, irritable, and wondering if you could somehow fake an injury to get out early. As the treatment nears its end, you're instructed to stand up slowly, which of course is easier said than done. Your legs feel like they belong to someone else, and as you pull yourself out of the pool, the cold air hits you like a slap in the face. It's like your body was never meant to be submerged in water so cold for so long. You feel a wave of dizziness as you take a few shaky steps toward the changing room. Your muscles sore from trying to stay still for so long. And yet, despite all of this, the doctor insists that this treatment is the key to mental clarity, to a rejuvenated body and spirit. You're not sure you feel any clearer, but you do feel something: exhausted. As you dry off and wrap yourself in a blanket, you can't help but wonder if the treatment was less about improving your health and more about testing your endurance. Was it really about healing, or was it just another way to prove that Victorian medicine could push your limits in the name of science? When you leave the room, you're greeted with the same cheery encouragement. "You should feel better now," the nurse says, but all you can think is, "I feel frozen and drained." You're not sure if it's the treatment or the sheer absurdity of it all, but one thing's for sure: you'll never look at hydrotherapy the same way again. What was supposed to be a rejuvenating experience has turned out to be a test of your patience, and the only thing you've learned is that some baths are better left untried, especially when they come with a side of shock therapy, straps, buckles, and straitjackets. Oh my. Victorian doctors were big fans of these gadgets, thinking that holding a patient immobile could calm their wild minds. Sounds a bit like they were testing out a new form of torture, doesn't it? The whole experience is less about healing and more about making sure you stay in place. You're strapped down now, the rough leather biting into your skin as you feel the weight of the restraints wrap around your chest, arms, and legs. The air is thick with a sense of finality, as if your body is no longer your own. The doctor assures you that this treatment is for your own good, something about restoring balance to your mind by keeping your body still. But all you can think is, am I about to be treated, or am I just being contained? The straitjacket is first, and you're immediately hit with the uncomfortable reality. It's not just about holding you still, it's about stripping you of your ability to even think clearly. The fabric is stiff, the straps digging into your shoulders, constricting your chest, making it harder to breathe. You try to adjust, but there's no give, no space for comfort. It's as if the very act of making you immobile is supposed to solve whatever is wrong with you, as if your condition could be cured by sheer force of restraint. You can almost hear the doctor's calm, professional voice in your head, explaining how this method of treatment will restore order to your mind. But really, all it's doing is making you feel like an animal in a cage, with no escape from the increasing pressure in your chest. Once the straitjacket is strapped tight, you're moved to a chair that's been designed with one purpose in mind: to keep you still. It's not designed for comfort, not by a long shot. The seat is hard, unforgiving, and the straps are even tighter than before. You can't move your arms, your legs, or even your head. Each part of you is locked in place. The idea is that by forcing you to sit still, your chaotic thoughts will be quelled. But there's something inherently wrong about this. How can a person's mind calm down when their body is being forced into submission? Is this really therapy, or just a convenient way to silence someone who doesn't fit into the narrow standards of normal behavior? You start to squirm within the restraints, desperate for any kind of movement, any sort of relief. Your mind begins to race, and the more you try to calm yourself, the worse it gets. The doctor continues to explain over and over again how stillness will restore balance, how the body's natural rhythms can be reestablished by keeping you locked in place. But none of this feels right. It feels suffocating, like being buried under the weight of 1,000 pounds of expectation. The more you think about it, the more it becomes clear. The only thing being fixed here is the fact that you can no longer move. The doctor leaves you there, alone, for what feels like an eternity. The silence is deafening, and you can't help but feel that there's something deeply wrong about a world that thinks forcing someone to sit still in a chair is the answer to their suffering. How is this healing? How is this compassion? You wonder what this method would look like if it were applied to anything else. Would we restrain people with broken legs until they learned to walk again? Would we bind people in a chair to teach them how to calm their minds? The logic doesn't make sense, and yet, here you are, the human test subject for a treatment that's less about care and more about control. Minutes or maybe hours pass. Time seems irrelevant when you're trapped in this position, unable to shift even the slightest bit. Your body starts to ache, your muscles tightening under the strain, and yet you're still expected to relax. You try to tell yourself that this will end soon, that it's all part of the healing process. But the more you try to make sense of it, the more you realize that this whole experience feels more like punishment than therapy. The restraint doesn't calm you. It makes you more anxious, more aware of your inability to move, to take back even a little bit of control over your own body. Eventually, the doctor returns, and you're released from the restraints, your arms and legs tingling from the lack of movement. He smiles at you as if you've been through something beneficial. You've done well, he says, as though you've just completed a routine task. But all you can feel is frustration, a deep sense of unease about what you've just endured. How can anyone claim that this is treatment? How can anyone look at the broken body they've just restrained and think, yes, that will heal their mind? In the aftermath of the treatment, you start to feel a certain numbness take over. You're not physically injured, but you're not healed either. The straitjacket may have been removed, but it's as if a piece of you was left behind in the straps. You're unsure of what you've learned from this experience, but one thing is painfully clear. This isn't healing. It's a manipulation of the body, an attempt to fix something that can't be fixed by brute force. And as you leave the clinic, you can't help but wonder, what if the true answer wasn't about keeping me still, but about letting me move? The padded room was designed to offer peace and quiet, but let's be honest, there's nothing peaceful about being locked in a room with foam walls and no way out. Doctors insisted that it was for your own good, but as you sit there, you can't help but wonder if treatment is just a euphemism for staring at padded walls until you lose your mind. You enter the room, and the first thing you notice is the smell, the faint odor of dust, old fabric, and something more unsettling, like the staleness of a place that hasn't seen fresh air in far too long. The walls, covered in thick, soft padding, give the place a strange, unnerving ambiance. It's too quiet, too still. The padded walls, intended to keep you safe, actually feel like they're closing in on you. There's no window to see outside, no door to escape through, and perhaps worst of all, no real way to tell how long you've been there. There's no clock, no sense of time. In this room, time doesn't exist. It's just you, the walls, and your thoughts. The doctor assures you that this treatment is meant to help you reflect, to calm your nerves, and to remove external distractions. You're supposed to find peace in isolation, they say, to gather your thoughts away from the chaos of the world. You wonder if this was actually supposed to heal you, or if it was just a convenient way to keep you quiet, out of sight and out of mind. After all, there's no need to worry about the mentally unstable when you've locked them away in a padded cell. You sit there on the bare floor, your legs crossed, trying to make yourself comfortable, but the padding does little to soften the hardness of the space around you. There's nothing to do except be. You try to settle in, but the silence presses against you like a physical force. The stillness is oppressive, and soon it begins to gnaw at your nerves. The walls, so soft and forgiving in their appearance, seem to mock you with their emptiness. There's no room for escape, no opportunity to move, or even think freely without being conscious of the fact that you're trapped. You can't even stand up and stretch without the feeling that the walls are drawing closer, forcing you back into the tight confinement of your own thoughts. As the hours drag on, your mind begins to wander. At first, you try to relax, to calm yourself, but the longer you sit in that room, the more your thoughts start to turn inward. You think about the world outside, about the family you left behind, about the life you used to lead. But then your thoughts become muddled, more distorted, until you can't even remember what it felt like to be free. The quiet has a way of taking over. You realize that in this room, nothing else exists but your own internal monologue. You start to question if this is really helping, or if the walls are just closing in on you, slowly smothering your mind. You start to wonder, what did I do to deserve this? You try to push the thought away, but it lingers. It grows. Was it your outburst? Your inability to conform? Is this what they do to people who can't fit into the box they've designed for society? You start to feel the isolation, the humiliation of being put away in this tiny room for no other reason than someone thought you needed reflection time. The padded room, once seen as a tool for treatment, begins to feel more like a prison, and not just for your body, but for your mind as well. The silence, once intended to bring you peace, is now a source of torment. There's nothing to drown out your thoughts, no distractions, no human connection, no real sense of time. You're left alone with your mind, and it feels like it's becoming a prison of its own. You try to focus on breathing, on the simple act of remaining calm, but your mind refuses to be still. The longer you sit there, the more your thoughts spiral. You begin to feel the walls pressing against you, your mind's own form of restraint. The doctors outside seem confident in their methods. They believe that keeping you alone in this quiet, confined space will bring clarity, that in the absence of external influence, you'll find the answers you're looking for. But how can anyone find answers in a place that strips them of everything, of their ability to move, to speak, to interact with the world? You start to wonder if the real purpose of the padded room is not healing, but control. You're not here to recover. You're here to be silenced, to be locked away while the world moves on without you. As the days pass, you start to lose track of time. The room no longer feels like a temporary confinement. It feels like your entire world. The walls are no longer just a physical barrier. They've become your reality. You begin to lose sense of yourself, of who you were before this room swallowed you whole. You've been left here with nothing but your mind, and the longer you're trapped, the more you start to feel like you're losing it. Eventually, the door opens again. You're released, but you're not sure if you're better or worse for it. The padded room has taken something from you, something you can't quite name. You've survived, but at what cost? You leave, but you wonder if you'll ever truly leave the room behind. Will the echoes of its silence follow you forever? You wonder if this was really treatment at all, or just another way of making people disappear. And as you walk out into the world again, you can't help but wonder, what if the most dangerous thing wasn't the padded room itself, but the idea that peace could be found by trapping someone inside their own mind? For some patients, the ice-cold plunge wasn't just a suggestion, it was the main event. Some doctors believed that dunking you in freezing cold water was the perfect cure for your disturbed mind. The only problem? You may end up disturbed in ways they didn't predict. Let's just say it's less therapeutic and more, please don't make me do this again. You stand at the edge of the freezing pool, your breath visible in the chilly air. The water is almost shockingly cold, the kind of cold that makes you question every life decision that brought you to this point. The doctor, beaming with an unnerving sense of pride, assures you that this is the treatment you've been waiting for. It'll clear your head, he says, as if dunking you into ice water is just as natural as drinking a cup of tea. But all you can think about is the fact that this water is not just cold, it's frighteningly cold, and you're about to plunge into it with little more than a nervous smile and a lack of alternatives. The logic behind the treatment is simple, or at least it seems simple. Victorian medicine thought that mental illness could be shocked out of you, and what better way to shock your system than by plunging it into freezing cold water? The cold is supposed to rattle your nerves, reset your body, and refresh your mind. The doctor believes that by shocking your body in this way, it will help restore balance to your mind. But you're not so sure that freezing water is the answer to your mental health woes. Your mind isn't the problem, it's your body dreading the plunge ahead. As you're led to the water's edge, A strange sense of helplessness begins to settle in. There's no going back. The nurse beside you seems far too calm, guiding you into the water like this is a normal part of the day. You have no choice but to step in, and as soon as your toes hit the surface, a jolt of cold shoots up your spine. Your whole body reacts, thus muscles tensing, heart racing. But you're told to relax, to adjust. Relax? How do you relax when your body is being subjected to temperatures that would make penguins wince? The moment you're fully submerged, the cold sinks in deeper, through your bones, into your muscles, until you feel as though your very soul is being frozen. The shock to your system is immediate, your body fighting to find warmth, to return to something that feels comfortable, familiar, but instead, you're trapped in a moment of ice-cold agony with no way to escape. You gasp for breath, but the water chills your lungs, making it harder to catch a full breath. You wonder, for a fleeting moment, if this is how your life ends. Not with a bang, but with a silent, frigid plunge that no one could have prepared you for. The doctor watches from the side, his expression a mixture of calm and clinical detachment. He's seen this before, no doubt. You, on the other hand, are struggling to remember why you agreed to this. The idea of shocking your system into healing sounds good in theory, but the reality is far worse. You're no longer thinking about mental clarity. All you can think about is the ice-cold water and whether you'll make it through the next few minutes without completely losing your mind. It's not just the physical discomfort, it's the helplessness, the feeling of being trapped in a situation you can't escape. Your limbs go numb, and it becomes harder to stay focused on anything other than the sheer, overwhelming cold. You start to lose track of time. How long has it been? 10 minutes? 20? You begin to wonder if this is actually going to help, or if the only thing you'll walk away with is a very serious case of frostbite. The doctor seems unbothered by your visible discomfort, as if this is all part of the process. But to you, it feels more like a medieval torture ritual than a legitimate treatment. Eventually, the nurse helps you out of the water, but the relief is short-lived. You feel a strange mixture of weakness and trembling in your body, your muscles slow to respond, as if they've been numbed by the cold. The warmth of the air doesn't immediately feel like a comfort. It feels like a strange, unfamiliar thing, almost as though you're still stuck in the water, unable to thaw. You can barely find the strength to stand on your own, your body still shaking violently from the cold that seeped into your bones. As the nurse wraps you in a blanket, the doctor tells you that the treatment is effective, that you'll feel the benefits soon, but you're not so sure. You're not sure you'll ever feel anything beyond the sharp, biting sensation of cold. You're not sure you'll ever want to be submerged in ice water again. In fact, you'd rather not feel anything at all than endure another minute of this freezing treatment. You're led back to your room, still trembling, still trying to catch your breath. The idea that such a violent shock to your system could cure your mind seems almost laughable now. This isn't therapy. This isn't healing. It's a lesson in survival, a reminder that sometimes the things we call cures can do more harm than good. And as you try to warm up, you realize that you haven't really been treated at all. You've simply been subjected to another form of control, another experiment in the name of science. You may have survived the plunge, but you're still left wondering, was this really the way to heal? You certainly don't feel any more rejuvenated. If anything, You feel like the cold water has frozen something deeper inside you, something you might not be able to thaw out. Victorian scientists believed in the power of suggestion, so much so that they thought simply talking about mental illness could make it disappear. You'll sit there, your mind already half broken, while some doctor prattles on about how strong you are. The whole thing is more like a motivational speech, but without the inspiration or the help. As you sit in the uncomfortable chair, trying to focus on the doctor's words, you begin to wonder if anyone in this room knows what they're doing. The doctor, with his overly confident air, insists that your mind just needs to be reprogrammed with positive affirmations. Apparently, all of your distress, your mental anguish, is just the result of not thinking the right way. All you need is a little encouragement, and poof, your issues will vanish. Just think positively, he says with a smile that almost feels patronizing. You're stronger than you think. You just have to believe in your own strength. You try to nod, but the last thing on your mind is optimism. You've tried everything to feel better, and nothing has worked so far. The doctor, however, is convinced that a few choice words can flip a mental switch inside you. The more he speaks, the more you realize this isn't a treatment, it's a performance. The doctor is reading from a script that sounds like it came from a self-help pamphlet, but you're not here for platitudes, you're here for help. You begin to feel like you're being scolded, told that the very reason you're struggling is because you haven't tried hard enough to control your thoughts. It's the Victorian equivalent of just snap out of it, but wrapped in more elegant words and delivered with a sense of superiority that makes you feel even worse. The doctor's voice is steady, calm, and filled with conviction as he talks about the untapped potential of your mind. He believes that if you just imagine yourself as strong, confident, and free of your mental troubles, the cure will come. What they fail to understand is that feeling mentally healthy and being mentally healthy are two completely different things. But of course, the doctor is too wrapped up in his own theories to see it. He continues his motivational speech, explaining how you're in control of your mind. Your body is just a vessel. Your mind is the real source of power. He tells you that thoughts are things you can control with sheer will. You don't need medication, you don't need therapy, you just need mental discipline. You're skeptical, of course, but it's hard to argue with someone who's been trained in the science of mental health, no matter how nonsensical their advice sounds. It's like trying to talk sense to someone who insists that all your problems can be solved by positive thinking, while they wave their hands in front of your face like it's some kind of magical gesture. The more you listen, the more you feel the disconnect between what he's saying and what you're experiencing. Your mental health isn't some abstract thing you can change with a few well-placed words. It's a deep, pervasive force that affects every part of you. You try to remind yourself that he is the expert here, that maybe if you just give it time, the magic of suggestion will work. But the longer you sit there, the more the words start to sound hollow. You start to wonder if the only thing broken here is the treatment itself. It's ironic, isn't it? The doctor, with all his confidence in the power of suggestion, is the one who's truly disconnected from reality. He's convinced that changing your thoughts will magically erase your suffering, but he doesn't see how much more complex mental health truly is. Fixing a mind isn't as simple as reciting affirmations. It's not about willpower or the ability to push through your pain with positive thinking. It's about acknowledging the struggle, understanding the depth of your distress, and working with someone who really understands how to help you through it. By the time the session ends, you feel more exhausted than when you entered. The words of the doctor, meant to empower you, have only left you feeling more helpless. The idea that simply thinking positively could cure you feels laughable. Sure, you could try to force a smile and convince yourself that everything's fine, but inside, you know that pretending to be okay doesn't make you feel better. It just buries the problem deeper. But the doctor, oblivious to the harm of his own advice, smiles and pats you on the back, assuring you that you'll feel the effects soon. You leave his office, disillusioned, and walk down the hallway, your mind swirling with conflicting emotions. His words still echo in your ears. You're stronger than you think. Maybe you are, but in that moment, all you can think is that you wish healing was as simple as believing it would happen. You wish that mind over matter could truly work. But the reality is, it's not that easy, and no amount of encouragement will change that. In the end, what you need isn't someone telling you to think positively. What you need is someone to truly listen, to understand that mental health isn't something you can just think away. You need someone who understands the complexity of your mind and the depth of your experience. Maybe someday the doctors will catch up with the reality of mental illness. But for now, you're left to navigate your own journey to healing, with the painful realization that the power of suggestion doesn't hold the magic cure it promises. You didn't think I'd forget the leeches, did you? Victorian doctors were pretty sure that leeching could cure a variety of ailments, including mental illness. Yes, it's as gross as it sounds. The idea was that by draining just a little blood, the body could reboot itself. How exactly, no one knows, but you're definitely feeling the discomfort as the leeches do their thing. You're lying on a narrow cot, the smell of antiseptic hanging in the air, but it's not comforting, not in the least. The doctor, a man with more enthusiasm than he should have, stands at the side of your bed with a glass jar filled with leeches. You can't help but wonder if he's using this treatment as an excuse to collect an army of tiny vampires for his personal use. There's no gentle introduction here, no, hey, this will feel uncomfortable, but might help. No, instead, the doctor simply explains that leeching is the modern way to rebalance your body's humors, clear out toxins, and of course, fix your mind. The leeches are placed strategically on your skin, those little creatures ready to latch on and begin their work. You can feel your skin crawl just thinking about it. The moment one of the leeches attaches itself to your leg, you're hit with the strange sensation of something tugging at you. It's not painful at first, just an odd, pulling feeling that makes you more aware of your skin than you've ever been. The leech burrows into your flesh, and the mild discomfort soon gives way to a dull, throbbing sensation as the creature begins to suck the blood from your veins. You try to breathe deeply, but every tug from the leech makes your stomach flip. The doctor smiles benignly, assuring you that you're doing fine. It's for your own good, he says, as though that explanation could justify the minor trauma your body is now experiencing. Your thoughts race. What kind of healing is this? A small part of you wants to protest, to ask what sort of medieval charlatanry this is, but you can't. You're bound to the cot, the straps across your arms holding you in place, and the leeches are already doing their work. With each new one, the blood begins to drain from you, not quickly, but slowly, until it feels like you're being hollowed out, one drop at a time. The worst part? The leeches don't just suck up the blood, They leave behind an oddly uncomfortable sense of emptiness. You wonder if this is what it feels like to have part of your soul sucked out of you. After all, these creatures are supposed to be taking something from you, but you can't help but wonder what exactly they're taking and what it means for your mind, body, and spirit. The doctor, meanwhile, seems completely oblivious to your internal panic. He's busy arranging more leeches, tapping them carefully into the water to pick just the right one. For a moment, you're convinced that he's treating this as some strange hobby, as if these creatures are pets, and you're the one stuck playing host. It's supposed to be a cure, they say, but all you can think about is how absurd it is. Bloodletting was a common treatment for ailments back then, a way to rebalance the humors that were thought to be responsible for physical and mental health. If a person had too much blood, or too little depending on the diagnosis, they might be subjected to leeching or bloodletting in an attempt to restore the right balance. But at this point, it's unclear what's more disturbing: the fact that they thought this would help, or the fact that you're still lying there, letting it happen. As the minutes pass, the blood loss begins to tell. You feel lightheaded, your limbs growing heavier with each second. The doctor doesn't seem to notice. He's wrapped up in his work, rearranging leeches, making notes in a small book. You try to focus on something, anything, besides the draining sensation in your veins. Maybe it's the dizziness, or maybe it's just the creeping realization that you're being experimented on. But at this point, you almost wish the doctor would stop. You can't help but think about how this is supposed to cure mental illness. You've never felt less clear-headed. Your thoughts are sluggish, and your mind keeps drifting back to the strange horror of being drained by leeches. Finally, after what feels like hours, the doctor announces that the session is over. The leeches are carefully removed from your skin, the tiny wounds oozing blood. The doctor seems pleased with the results, marking down the amount of blood lost and explaining how beneficial it will be for your mental state. You're told to rest for a while, drink some water, and take it easy. You're not sure if you're supposed to feel better, but the only thing you feel is the faint, nagging sense that something's off. You're lighter, yes, but it's not the kind of lightness you hoped for. You're not rejuvenated or healed. You're just exhausted. The doctor leaves the room, pleased with his work, but you're left wondering, was that really necessary? The leeches have come and gone, but the effects of the treatment linger. The mind doesn't heal like that. It doesn't get fixed by losing a little blood. But maybe, just maybe, Victorian science hadn't yet realized that mental health isn't a matter of draining you until you're empty. It's about filling you up with the right care, support, and understanding. For now, all you can do is rest, hoping that the next experiment might actually help. If you think modern medicine is harsh, wait until you hear about bleeding and blistering. In the Victorian age, doctors would literally drain your blood and apply blisters to your skin to cure mental illness. Sure, you might feel like you're dying, but at least they didn't have to listen to you complain about your condition anymore. It starts innocently enough, with the doctor explaining how scientifically sound the procedure is. They assure you that this is not a medieval relic, but a scientifically advanced treatment designed to restore your balance, an essential step toward healing your troubled mind. The theory is simple. Too much blood or too much bad humors causes mental illness, so let's just remove it and replace it with a bit of discomfort. There's a certain logic to this, but it's the kind of logic you might expect from someone who believes shrinking your brain might cure a headache. You're led into a small room, dimly lit, with a surprisingly sparse table covered in a few grim-looking implements. The doctor cheerfully explains how he'll be draining your blood first, just a little to relieve the pressure of your ill-tempered humors. As he prepares the needles, you can't help but think about how this is starting to feel more like a horror movie than a medical treatment. But you're already here, and the idea of refusing feels much more painful than the promise of a quick procedure. The first part is bloodletting. A sharp prick and your blood begins to flow, filling the small jar next to you. You wince, feeling the blood drain from your body, but the doctor assures you that it's all for your own good. You wonder how anyone could ever consider this a cure, but the doctor is too busy checking the amount of blood removed to notice your skepticism. As the minutes pass, you feel weaker, your body light, as though something vital is slipping away with each drop. The bloodletting doesn't hurt exactly, but it makes you feel uncomfortably close to your own mortality. Once the blood is drained, you're handed a damp cloth to wipe your forehead. You feel dizzy, but the doctor presses on, explaining that next, he will apply blisters to your skin. The idea, he says, is that the blisters will draw out toxins from the body, releasing all the bad humors that have built up in your skin and muscles. This apparently will allow your body to return to a state of balance. The process is as painful as it sounds. Small glass cups are heated and then pressed against your skin, creating suction. You feel the skin underneath pull, stretch, and then blister. The first few moments are bearable, but soon the blistering sensation intensifies, like 100 small burns spreading across your body. You can't help but gasp. The doctor keeps a calm demeanor, though, assuring you that the discomfort is part of the healing. He seems convinced that the sight of your blistered skin will somehow be a sign of recovery. You begin to wonder if he believes that healing through pain is the only way to fix a troubled mind. The worst part isn't even the pain, it's the helplessness. The idea that you are subjected to all of this because someone else believes it will cure you is maddening. How can you trust the process when every step seems like it's designed to make you feel worse, not better? And yet, here you are, enduring the pain because the doctor says it's what's needed to restore your balance. It's almost as if he thinks that by taking everything from you, your blood, your comfort, your dignity, he can fix your mind. As the treatment continues, you're not sure what's worse, the pain or the sense of hopelessness. The blisters are growing, the burning sensation spreading across your skin like wildfire. You try to focus on anything other than the pain, anything to distract yourself, but there's nothing. You're trapped in this moment, feeling your skin blistering and your body weakening with each passing second. You can feel the blood return to your head, the dizziness creeping in. What was it that made anyone think this would work? Why would anyone believe that you could be healed by pain? Eventually, the procedure ends. You're exhausted, physically drained, and covered in the remnants of your own suffering. The blisters are tender, and your blood feels like it's still caught in your veins, sluggish and thick. The doctor smiles at you, assured that his work has worked its magic. You'll feel much better now, he says, as though this was all part of a well-organized plan for your mental well-being. You're not sure what to say. You can barely sit up without feeling lightheaded. He pats you on the back, tells you to rest, and leaves the room with a satisfied smile. As you sit there, You begin to wonder if the treatment was more about pacifying you than healing you. You don't feel better, you feel worse. And the more you think about it, the more you realize this wasn't about curing a mental illness. It was about breaking you down, taking control of your body and mind with pain and suffering, convincing you that you could only heal if you first endured extreme discomfort. You leave the treatment room, your skin still burning, your body still weak, and your mind filled with questions. What was the point of it all? The doctor's confidence in his methods was so sure, yet all you have now are scars, physical and mental, that make you wonder if the cure was worse than the illness. If this was healing, maybe it was time to question what real healing actually looks like. When all else failed, the Victorians believed isolation was the answer. You're put in a room by yourself with nothing but your thoughts and a strict regimen of silence. It's supposed to give you time to reflect, but you're more likely to spend it planning your escape. You're led into a small, barren room, and the door shuts behind you with a finality that feels like the weight of your entire future crashing down. The air inside is stale, the silence deafening. It's nothing like the serene, reflective space the doctor promised you. There's no comfortable chair, no window to look out of, and certainly no comforting distractions. The walls, painted a dull gray, are stripped of anything that might catch your eye. No pictures, no books, not even a clock to mark the passing time. You are completely alone, and not by choice. This is your therapy, and it's being presented as a solution to your mental woes. You can't help but wonder, how is this supposed to help? The doctor, as usual, was full of optimism. This is for your own good, he assured you, just before ushering you in and locking the door behind you. The idea is simple. If you're forced into complete silence and isolation, you'll have no choice but to face your own mind and reflect on your disturbances. If you're lucky, you'll come to some sort of epiphany, solve your inner turmoil, and walk out a changed person. Of course, no one ever asked what happens when you're left alone with your thoughts for too long. At first, you try to sit still, to follow the doctor's advice. You try to be patient, waiting for the calming reflection he promised would come. But after a while, your mind starts to race. You think about everything you've been trying to avoid, your past mistakes, the things you've lost, the memories you'd rather forget. With no distractions, there's nothing to stop you from spiraling. What was meant to be a time of contemplation quickly becomes a prison of your own thoughts, a room filled with your deepest anxieties, regrets, and fears. Minutes stretch into hours, but it's impossible to tell exactly how long you've been here. Without a clock, time seems irrelevant yet suffocating. It's as if the very nature of isolation bends time to its will, slowing it down to an unbearable crawl. You try to focus on something, anything, but the silence only amplifies the noise inside your head. Your body feels heavy with the weight of your own solitude. The silence is suffocating, but what's worse is the thought that there's no escape. The door is locked, the windows sealed tight, and you're trapped in this small, empty space, completely at the mercy of your own mind. Your thoughts grow louder, more frantic. You start to imagine all sorts of things. A friend showing up to rescue you, a crack in the wall through which you could slip away, or even just someone to talk to, someone to break the silence. But there's nothing. There's only you. Your mind, once full of distractions and routines, is now completely consumed by the vast emptiness around you. The reflection you were supposed to achieve seems more like an impossible dream than a therapeutic outcome. How could anyone find peace in a place like this? How could you possibly reflect when your thoughts are nothing but a swirl of anxiety and panic, constantly spinning out of control? As the hours turn into what feels like days, you begin to wonder if this is really the solution. Is this treatment supposed to make you better, or is it simply a form of punishment disguised as therapy? The walls feel as though they are closing in on you. The isolation is no longer a path to clarity. It's a slow descent into madness. The silence, once intended to bring peace, now feels like an oppressive force pressing down on your chest, making it harder to breathe, harder to think. In the absence of outside stimulation, your mind starts to invent its own forms of distraction. You replay conversations you've had, analyze every word you've ever said, wondering if they were somehow wrong. You start to question everything: your decisions, your relationships, your very existence. It's as if the isolation has unlocked every possible flaw in your psyche, every corner of doubt and fear, and laid it out before you in stark, unforgiving detail. You can't help but think, this is supposed to be therapy? Eventually, the doctor returns, unlocking the door and ushering you out of the room. But you're not sure what's changed. The time spent alone with your thoughts has left you feeling more confused, more uncertain than ever before. Was this truly the answer to your struggles? Were you supposed to find clarity in your own mind, or was the only thing that really changed your perspective the sheer madness of the isolation itself? You leave the room, disoriented and exhausted, your mind still echoing with the silence that you were forced to endure. You wonder if this experience was just a cruel experiment in pushing someone to their breaking point. After all, what good is it to be alone with your thoughts when your thoughts are the very thing driving you mad? In the end, you realize that isolation, while sometimes necessary for self-reflection, is not the cure for mental illness. It's a form of punishment. The Victorian doctors, in their attempts to heal the mind, only made it worse. You're left wondering if anyone ever truly thought about the human cost of this treatment, or if it was simply a means of controlling those who couldn't fit into society's neat little box. The bath chair was supposed to be a form of water therapy, but let's be real. It was just a way to immobilize patients while they sat in water. Imagine being stuck in a chair, legs dangling in cold water, while a doctor tells you that healing is happening, when all you can think about is how badly your legs are cramping. You're seated now in the bath chair, which despite its name, looks less like a comfortable seat and more like a medieval contraption designed to make you question your life choices. The chair itself is made of heavy wood with leather straps that are soon buckled tightly around your body. The straps feel more like a restraint than a safety measure, holding you in place like a prisoner rather than a patient. Your legs hang freely, dangling in a tub of cold water. You can feel the water creep up your calves, icy and uninviting, and you're immediately struck by the uncomfortable, numbing chill that begins to settle in your bones. Your legs, once comfortably warm, are now stiffening, the cold seeping deeper with every passing minute. The doctor, standing by with an air of clinical detachment, assures you that the therapy will do wonders for your circulation. The idea, it seems, is that the cold water will stimulate your body, draw out impurities, and generally reset your health. But that's a hard pill to swallow when all you can focus on is the growing discomfort in your legs and the nagging doubt creeping into your mind. As the minutes drag on, you can't help but wonder, is this really treatment, or is this just another experiment in making you feel as uncomfortable as possible? The worst part is that you can't even move. The bath chair was specifically designed to keep you perfectly still, which would supposedly allow your body to adjust to the cold water and let the healing effects take hold. But here's the problem. No one wants to sit in a chair, perfectly still, with their legs submerged in freezing water for an extended period. It's one thing to experience a quick splash, but this feels like a slow, torturous test of your patience and endurance. Your body starts to go numb, your legs cramping, and you realize you're trapped in a situation that only seems to worsen with time. As the minutes stretch into what feels like hours, your thoughts begin to race. You try to distract yourself, to think about something, anything, other than the fact that you're freezing and immobile. But with each passing minute, it becomes harder to ignore the pain and discomfort. You begin to wonder if the cold water is doing anything at all for your body, or if it's just making things worse. The doctor insists that this treatment will restore your health, but all you can feel is the aching in your legs and the growing frustration in your mind. The longer you're left there, the more the reality sets in. This isn't healing, it's torture. The supposed therapeutic benefits of the bath chair are overshadowed by the simple fact that it's an experience so uncomfortable that it leaves you questioning the intelligence of anyone who thought this was a good idea. But the doctor remains confident. He repeats that this is good for you, that this will help balance your humors, improve circulation, and make you feel better overall. But you're starting to wonder if he's more invested in the idea of the treatment than in actually helping you. The cold water, rather than invigorating you, has left you feeling sluggish and drained. Your mind, once swirling with frustration, now focuses solely on the growing discomfort in your legs. Is this the healing he promised? You wonder. Finally, after what seems like an eternity, the doctor signals that the session is over. You're helped out of the chair, your legs tingling with a combination of numbness and soreness. The relief you feel from no longer being in the chair is almost immediate, but it's quickly replaced with the unpleasant reality that your legs are stiff, sore, and far from healed. In fact, they feel worse than they did before the treatment. Your body doesn't feel invigorated or restored. It feels violated by the cold and immobilized by the chair. You wonder if the doctor truly believes this treatment works. Or maybe he's simply convinced that if he says it enough times, you'll start to believe it too. You certainly don't feel better. You feel like you've just spent hours trapped in an uncomfortable chair, exposed to freezing water that only made you more aware of the discomfort in your body. The bath chair was supposed to help you, but all it's really done is remind you that sometimes the greatest part of any treatment is being able to leave it behind. As you leave the room, still slightly shaken by the experience, you can't help but think, was this really therapy? Or was it just a way to keep you in a controlled, uncomfortable space long enough to make you question whether you're the one who's truly broken? The bath chair was, after all, just another Victorian experiment in the guise of medical treatment, one that left you with little more than a crick in your neck and an aching sense of doubt about the so-called healing power of cold water. Victorian asylums were known for being places of treatment, but in reality, they were more like prisons. Cold, dark, and claustrophobic, these asylums were less about getting better and more about keeping patients out of sight and out of mind. You'll be stuck in a room with a dozen other patients, all trying to ignore the reality of their situation. As you walk through the heavy iron doors of the asylum, the first thing you notice is the overwhelming sense of cold. The air is thick and damp, and the smell, well, it's a mix of mildew and something that can only be described as institutional. The walls are drab and gray, the floors worn from decades of use. There's no warmth, no comfort, just the harsh, sterile environment that awaits all those deemed unfit by society. You are ushered into a room with a dozen other patients, all of whom seem either lost in their own world or resigned to their fate. You are told to sit on a cold wooden bench, the only piece of furniture in the room, and wait for the inevitable treatment that will make you better. But you can already tell this place is less about healing and more about confinement. The idea behind these asylums was that patients needed isolation and discipline to cure their mental illnesses. The problem is, no one seemed to know what cure actually meant. For the most part, you're treated like a prisoner, locked away, ignored, and forgotten. The staff rarely interacts with the patients, and when they do, it's only to enforce the rules of the asylum. There are no real conversations, no empathy, just a constant atmosphere of quiet despair. The patients shuffle around, not out of any specific purpose, but because there's nothing else to do. You see a man muttering to himself, a woman sitting silently with vacant eyes, and another who nervously wrings her hands, hoping for some sign of comfort. But there's nothing to comfort you here. The rules are rigid, and any attempt to escape, even mentally, is met with harsh consequences. Meals are bland and unappetizing, served at set hours, with no room for choice. You're given the same plain, tasteless food every day, and you begin to wonder if it's designed to keep you dull, to strip away any remaining semblance of will. The beds are nothing more than thin mattresses on hard, cold frames, and there's no privacy, just the shared misery of a dozen other souls, each as trapped as you are. At night, the room is filled with the sounds of restless bodies, turning, shuffling, and the occasional cry of someone who can't seem to escape their own torment. But no one listens. It's just part of the routine. You're left to your own devices for most of the day, with nothing to do but think about your life before this. You wonder how you ended up here, in a place where the very concept of healing seems to have been replaced by apathy. You think about the outside world, about the people you've lost, or the ones who have forgotten about you. In this room, your mind becomes your own worst enemy. You try to make sense of things, to find clarity, but the longer you sit there, the harder it becomes to separate the past from the present. The lines between reality and madness begin to blur, and you wonder if you'll ever escape the fog of your thoughts. The staff occasionally comes in to check on you, but their presence only serves to remind you that you're trapped in this dark, silent place. They make notes on their clipboards, check your vitals, and move on. There's no real interest in your well-being. You've become just another patient in a system that doesn't care to understand your mind, only to control it. They might prescribe a treatment, but it's rarely anything more than routine. More bloodletting, more isolation, more mechanical interventions designed to keep you subdued. Days stretch into weeks, and weeks into months. Time becomes a blur, marked only by the ringing of a bell for meals or the brief moments when you're moved from one cold room to another. There's no real progress, no sense that you're getting better, just the overwhelming sense that the asylum is a place where people go to disappear. The outside world is so far away now, You wonder if it ever really existed. You feel more like a ghost than a person, just one more face in the sea of faceless souls trapped in this unending cycle of despair. One day, a doctor comes in and gives you a brief evaluation. He asks you how you're feeling, but the words seem meaningless, as though he's reciting a script he's said 1,000 times before. You tell him the truth, that you're tired, that you feel lost, that nothing here is making you better, but the doctor just nods, scribbles some notes, and leaves. There's no real effort to understand, no real attempt to help you heal. The system is too broken for that. In the end, the Victorian asylum isn't a place of healing. It's a place of containment, where the mind is left to wither under the weight of isolation, neglect, and apathy. You realize that what you've been looking for isn't a cure, it's a way out. But in a place like this, escape seems impossible. The walls aren't just physical, they're mental, emotional, and spiritual, and no amount of treatment, no matter how harsh or invasive, can fix the damage done by a system that has abandoned its patients. Throughout the 19th century, the Victorians tried a variety of treatments to cure mental illness. And while we've made great strides since then, one thing remains clear. We've still got a lot to learn about the mind. So as you sit back and listen to these stories of medical mishaps, just be grateful that you live in an era where the idea of curing your brain involves a little more compassion and a lot fewer leeches. The Victorian approach to mental health care was rooted in an incomplete understanding of both the brain and the body. They were, after all, in the midst of discovering how the body functioned, with the germ theory of disease still in its infancy and many diseases still completely misunderstood. When it came to mental illness, the Victorians were just as lost, often resorting to bizarre and invasive treatments that ranged from the uncomfortable to the outright absurd. One of the most infamous treatments was bloodletting. The idea was simple. If the body had too much blood, it could cause a disturbance in the humors, leading to mental illness. So doctors would drain blood from patients, sometimes in copious amounts, to rebalance them. It's hard to believe now, but at the time, this was considered cutting-edge science. People were bled regularly, sometimes to the point of fainting, with the hopes that a lighter load of blood would clear their mind. Of course, there was no understanding of how blood actually circulated, or how losing too much could lead to weakness or even death. But if you were unlucky enough to be diagnosed with a disturbed mind, you were probably subjected to this terrifyingly primitive procedure. If the doctors weren't draining your blood, they were likely trying to fix you with blistering. This treatment involved applying heated glass cups to the skin, causing suction and eventually blisters to form. The idea was to draw out toxins from the body. To the Victorians, this was a revolutionary therapy, believed to purge harmful substances from the body and clear mental fog. The sight of these blisters wasn't just uncomfortable, it was physically painful. And while the patients writhed in agony, the doctors stood by, confident that they were curing the illness by literally pulling the bad humors out of the skin. If that didn't sound like healing, you'd better believe it did to them. And if the physical pain wasn't enough, the mental treatments could feel like a slow form of psychological torture. One such treatment involved the use of isolation, where patients were locked away in small rooms, often with no company but their own thoughts. The theory was that quiet, solitary confinement would give the patient time to reflect and recover. But let's be real, being locked in a sterile, dimly lit room for hours or days with no human contact is not the kind of therapy that encourages healing. It only exacerbates the despair, increasing the sense of isolation and reinforcing the feelings of hopelessness. The Victorians believed that isolation would reset the mind, but instead, it often led to increased anxiety, hallucinations, or emotional breakdowns. Then there were the infamous methods designed to shock the system into healing, such as electroconvulsive therapy, or as the Victorians might have called it, shock therapy. While the term might sound modern, its roots lie in the Victorian obsession with electricity as a cure-all. The concept was that an electric shock could stimulate the brain, clear mental fog, and cure all manner of illnesses. This primitive version of ECT was much cruder than today's, and it was often delivered without any consideration for safety. The patient would receive a massive jolt of electricity, sometimes leaving them convulsing on the table, and the belief was that this could reset the mind. Of course, what it really did was cause muscle spasms, injuries, and psychological trauma. But hey, the Victorians didn't have much patience for nonsense, like informed consent. If they thought it worked, it worked. The reality, of course, is that these treatments did little more than traumatize patients, often leaving them in worse shape than when they began. Yet for decades, these methods were widely accepted, considered innovative even, despite the overwhelming evidence that they didn't really work. The Victorians, with all their medical advances, were stuck in a time where the mind was still largely a mystery, and the way to deal with mental illness was more about control than care. If you couldn't be fixed with a little bloodletting, they'd try something else, something more invasive, more extreme, and often more damaging. Now fast forward to today, and while we've come a long way in terms of mental health care, there's still a long road ahead. We no longer use leeches or blistering to treat the mind, but we still struggle to understand the complexities of mental health and what truly helps people recover. Today's treatments, whether they be talk therapy, medications, or brain stimulation techniques, are far more humane and scientifically sound, but the journey to get here has been paved with centuries of mistakes, missteps, and suffering. So as you sit back and reflect on the treatments of the past, remember this: though we've come a long way, there's still much more to learn. We've traded in leeches and electroshock for compassion, understanding, and research. But even today, the mind remains one of the greatest mysteries of all. And the best cure, it seems, is simply allowing those who suffer to be heard, understood, and supported. You can't heal the mind with a leech, a needle, or a knife, but you can start by listening. As you settle into your warm, cozy bed tonight, maybe take a moment to appreciate the progress we've made in understanding the mind and the medical advancements that make the Victorian treatments look like the stuff of nightmares. It's easy to look back and laugh at the absurdities of leeches, blistering, and bloodletting, but remember, those methods were once considered state-of-the-art. They were the best ideas that science had to offer, driven by a desperation to cure what was misunderstood. But now we know better. Today, mental health care focuses on compassion, treatment, and understanding, things that were sorely lacking in the Victorian era. As you drift off to sleep tonight, take comfort in knowing that your brain is in far safer hands than it would have been a century ago. And while the mind remains as mysterious as ever, we're a lot more equipped to help it heal. So let's be grateful for the advances we've made, and for the fact that today, if you need help, you're more likely to find kindness and care than leeches and straitjackets. Sleep well, knowing that we've come a long way. Until next time, may your dreams be free of blisters, bloodletting, and the horrors of outdated medical science. Okay, good night.